It? Are we doing it?
We are doing it.
We are doing it.
Hello,
Okay,
folks.
we're
Bill and
doing it.
Brian with Energy Road. We're here with a weekly update. Hey, listen, we hope everything's going good with you this week. Hey, listen, we're talking a little bit about natural gas today. Now, Brian and I sometimes disagree on these things. I'm not sure we disagree on this because he says his natural gas is heading to $5 or $2. I'm saying maybe yes. So,
I think you're right. Okay, first off, a little bit of news. OPEC Plus did decide to add some incremental barrels, 411,000 barrels a day of incremental supply in June. Now, for those on crude, we were debating on which topic to do. So, for those on crude, we're going to talk about that a little bit later. But OPEC Plus, with that, does impact natural gas in the United States. So we'll talk about that a little bit later. But really, what we're going to dive in on are what are the key variables that you need to be watching to understand if we're headed to $5 or $2. Because I think Bill is right, or no, I know Bill is right. Both are going to happen. Both
that's right.
are going to happen. It's a question of when. And
You was serious about that?
so
Exactly.
we are going to go to 5, we are going to go to 2, and right now if we take a look at the forward market, December is trading $4.80. Right now the December contract for natural gas is trading $4.80. So in 2024 we averaged we're kind of hung in the $2 to $3 range, and then last year at the end of the year we ticked up to 4. So now, what I would
By
say
the way,
is
we called at that time, but we called it would go to 4 back in the summer
actually
last year.
in the spring, because we had some of our clients that were really struggling, some of our producer clients that were really struggling, and asking if there is going to be any hope for natural
There is
gas.
no tomorrow for you.
So,
Exactly. How they felt
so
like.
So that's what that's what it felt like for a lot of producers last year. That said, this year is going to be complicated if you're an oil producer, and probably pretty good if you're a natural gas producer. But let's go ahead and dive in why and how. So what are the factors that could drive natural gas to $5? A severe winter, of course, we're not going to know that until we get to December, until we get to
Right.
November. So what
So,
we're really going to be talking about is kind of power demand in the summer, right? So we'll talk about
what's
power
different?
demand in a second.
What's different about severe winter? You know what's different about severe winter?
What's that?
Because now we're talking about whether it's going to be severe winter in the U.S. and Europe.
Yep,
We used to not worry about Europe at all, but
yep.
with our LNG being at 16 BCF a day right now, going to 20, what's happening in Europe counts. What's happening in Asia counts. So when we talk about winter, you have to be looking not just at the U.S. but everywhere else as well.
Well, and that's why we're going to leave you with the 5 key things to watch for this year that'll tell you whether we're headed to 5 or whether we're headed to 2, or said more accurately, which one first. So we're gonna
Right,
we're gonna hit
exactly.
we're gonna hit both of them. So a severe weather and extreme cold. If we have an anticipated expected winter, there's going to be a lot of fear on the market, especially given what happened this past winter, where we actually had a winter. The previous 2 winters we didn't really have.
Right.
If we have maxed out LNG exports, we're currently underutilized by about a B and a half to 2 BCF a day. If Europe and Asia want or need more LNG, we're going to fill that capacity. That is going to add 2 BCF of demand. The past
That's
three,
moving. That's probably wouldn't you say that's moving toward now the last. Usually it's always the last BCF, maybe BCF and a half. It's price sensitive as opposed to also just demand.
Well, and that's really where we're getting is if we're talking about 2 BCF on LNG, and then we're talking about 2 BCF on power, and then we're talking 2 BCF on severe winter. And Canadian imports, we're probably only talking about 1 BCF. But when you add these up, if you add these up, you're coming up with 7 BCF swing. Okay. These are going to be demand side, and this one is supply side. You do need to watch production, and that's going to be important. But we're going to let's just show you on the supply side. I want to show you this from last year because this is very revealing. Um, does that look like a growth story? That is not a growth story.
That is
That
not
is
a great
from
story.
that is from January 2024 to actually
Current.
April 2025. So that is actually, well, yeah, April. Um, so this is a growth that this was decline and a recovery. And so the question is, are we going to add some this year? The answer is no, and it predominantly has to do with this chart right here, which there we go. Shows this is all the declines in the US because oil and gas wells decline, and we are currently in decline. So that means we are treading water to stay flat on production. And it's part of the reason we didn't include production profile on this list because production is going to be static. It's going to be flat at best and possibly decline.
Flat to down, yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be flat to down, but demand, LNG exports, power are going to, and Canadian imports, those are going to be the key factors to watch. Now, what could trigger $2 gas? Bill, what do you think? Oh wait, I,
I mean,
I
it's
should I
going to
should
be
ask you when we're not
replaced.
staring at it. I should ask you when we're not staring at it. What do you think now?
There, people like to read ahead. You know how that
I'll do,
goes.
donkey.
I know how you guys are. You like to read ahead. That's why we don't do PowerPoints too often because you're always a slide ahead of us.
Yeah.
But the idea here is that any kind of increase in supply is going to do that. And the reason we say it could go to $2 is because if we go to $5 first, you'll see some gas come on that we haven't seen on in quite a while.
Right.
So we could see a production increase. Now, once again, LNG is a big swing part of what we have going on. Remember, those are mechanical plants. You usually have one plant go down that's doing 2 BCF a day. Um, you're going to see that's going to increase that's going to increase supply. That's going to drive the price down. Storage surplus. I think this one's not doesn't concern me near as much. It's possible, but it's not. I mean, we're seeing that we're already starting out below where we were last year, and so I think I don't think that's going to be the big issue. I think it's going to be more around LNG, and I think it's going to be more around demand and whether renewables can keep up their promises.
Yep. Here's storage. We started the year setting new 5-year highs, then got below, and we're now back to flat. So, but the renewables, this is the side that I really wanted to key in on when we look at the demand factor. So we just looked at storage, right?
Right.
This is the key question right here, which is if we go back to 2021 and we go here, you can see that we've stair-stepped up during winter periods, except for right here. That is potentially a problem when it comes to demand. But I want to point out something. AI was launched somewhere in here, and you can see we've continued to grow. This is natural gas for electric power. So the word on the street is, and we're going to be tracking this because we track electricity. The word on the street is that the solar and battery build out has been so rapid that this is going to finally eat into natural gas, into power. So if it does, we're going to have a bigger problem here because we've gotten used to growing our electric supply when it comes to this. Because the last 3 years, 4 years, we've continued to set new highs. So if this trend continues, then I'm mega bullish, but I'm cautious here.
Right.
I'm very cautious because I've heard it, and there's a little bit of boy who cried wolf. Um, but could this be the time? I don't know. I've heard the battery build out is going to be massive. Now, another thing to look at is reduced LNG exports, because when we look at LNG right here, go here. Okay, you will see this is LNG by week. You can see a solid trend up, and that's because we had capacity expansions. But our capacity is up here. So why aren't we increasing here? It's because of international dynamics. This fits back to what Bill was saying. You have to look at the entire grid now. And it's part of the reason that we put everything into one simple page so that you could look at technicals, so that you could look into fundamentals. And then down below, you can monitor the TTF and JKM prices. For instance, JKM is
In
still
fact, folks, if you're
showing.
not looking at this analysis, if you're not looking at this analysis page every day, I mean, once you look at this, you probably won't look at hardly anything else. I don't suggest that. I think you should always be looking at multiple things, but this is a one-stop shop right here,
Yeah, yeah.
and it's hard to
Well,
get this in this kind of format.
this gives you everything where you have an executive summary, you have technical analysis, so the signals, fundamental analysis to where you can look at dry production versus last week, last year, the 3-year average, LNG imports, because believe it or not, we do import. And then down here, right here, you've got the LNG exports. And you can see last year we were at 10.9 BCF a day. We're up to 16.4, but that's not even the capacity. And look at this one. This is sneaky, sneaky, sneaky. So Mexico, 6.9. Last year we were at 6.
Yeah,
So that's a BCF. Now, when we look at the supply and demand balance, though, we are way over the mark. So right now we're in a bearish sentiment, and it has to do with very low residential and commercial, and power is hanging in there, but it really has to do with that because last year we were at 14.7, this year 13.1, and our 3-year average is 18. So right now, seasonally, and that's weather related. So that is the
that's weather related.
reason. Yeah. So when we look at the triggers for $5, it's going to be demand, LNG exports, increased power demand, Canadian imports on
I think
$2
there's
natural gas.
one thing we don't have on there, and I call it sort of the hidden, and it's probably not going to take place in 2025. It's probably more like 2026, maybe even 2027, and that is the off-grid power demand. And
Mm,
that's going to be by
mhm.
these AI centers have decided to become their own power company, and they're
Right.
building gas turbines, and they're going to use that natural gas to power AI. It will not go through the grid, and
Yeah.
that has some problems in itself for the stability of the grid. But it's also going to be almost a phantom market that we have that's not being tracked by anybody right now, and it's going to increase the demand for gas without it really showing up as a power demand. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how we handle that in the future.
Yep. I think you're right. Um, so production resilience, if we continue to have that, again, looking at history, we're able to see some highs and lows. The COVID pandemic took us down to $2. Last year, we were at $2. We just had too much supply for the demand. And
Right.
2014, we had a big polar vortex. 2022, the European crisis, we were up to 9. These show the volatility. So if you're trading natural gas, if you are buying natural gas, if you are selling natural gas, you should pay attention to these. And it's part of the reason that we established Energy Rogue and provided a resource to get institutional level knowledge and charts so that you could go in and explore these things. We have a tremendous amount of information on natural gas liquids, crude oil, refined products, electricity, rigs, so much more. And we also put things into convenient places so that you can get to the answers very quickly. And then we even have our weekly reports that put it into a convenient red light, green light, so that you can actually look at this in a glance and understand storage is bullish, weather's bearish, production is bullish because we haven't been growing. Canadian imports is bearish because we actually added some this past week, and demand and LNG. You can go down and actually create your thoughts around what is happening in the marketplace. So here's the key wild cards to watch. I've only got 4 listed, but it's really 5. So Canadian imports. Okay. Canada gives us a lot of supply. Let me go over the supply side and let's look at history here. And when we look at this, you can see that week over week, we kept increasing, right, over time. Now it's choppy. And I get that. It is choppy. But if we look at that, we've been increasing over time. Not a lot, but a little. So right now, we went from this level all the way down here. Now, you may ask yourself a question, why is that? Well, it has to do with 2 factors. Number one, Canada is starting up their own LNG called Kitimat. That is going to take about 2 BCF a day, and that means they're going to have less to send our way as long as LNG is more profitable. And spoiler alert, it is. Um, so the so Canada is going to likely be a variable to watch. Are we going to reduce some more because Kitimat is just getting started? So are we going
Right.
to have reduced imports? So that's a key variable to watch, right?
I would put Canadian imports as a volatility knob. I think they're gonna increase the volatility coming in and coming out. Whereas before, I mean, we could always count on probably between 4 and 5 BCF, no matter what. I
Yep,
think we could see those spikes get deeper and higher. And
right.
so, but they still struggle with all the regulations under oil and gas industry as well. So we
Yep,
could be as part of that as well.
yep. US production, you do need to watch that because as much as we painted a scenario of kind of flat-ish when we look at dry production, right? When we look at this curve right here, this does not give me a lot of confidence in growth. This gives me more of the same. Maybe we toggle up a little bit, and then you flip sides. So watching Canadian imports, in other words, if we grow by BCF, but Canadian imports drop by BCF, it's the same. It's it, it's the same
Right.
dynamic. So power demand. This one is probably a
And I think
higher
Brian,
intense. What?
we need to point out on U.S. production. U.S. production is always in decline. Unless
Yeah.
you drill, you will always be in decline.
Yes.
And so we're always fighting decline. How hard we fight it is on the number for how much production we bring on. And by the way, anymore, that's not just the number of rigs, but it's how productive the rigs are. And so you got to be careful about watching rig recount only.
Right.
And so you got to see how much gas is actually coming on. And there's a lot of gas that can come on in the $5 and $6 range.
Hmm.
That gas
Yeah.
disappears in the $3 and $4 range.
Right. That's exactly it. Power demand. This is a key variable to watch, and this is probably a higher dial either way on the extremes, because if we continue the trend over the last 3 years and add 2 BCF, I get very bullish, especially with lighter supply. So that is a key variable to watch. The last one is global markets. That's not really one variable, that's two. That is Mexico, that is LNG, that is tariffs. You have to pay attention to all kinds of things because LNG in natural gas is now a global commodity. It used to be just the US grid, not the case anymore. So those are the key
That's right.
variables to watch.
One out of 4 MCF goes overseas.
Yeah, yeah. Um,
And the other thing
and
in global markets is crude oil. If crude oil goes down, Permian stops producing. All of a sudden, we don't have all that gas that's associated with that Permian crude.
yeah. Well, it's part of the reason that we actually track that right over here in our rigs and production and trends. And when we look at those trends, we're able to identify, for instance, if we take each basin by basin, if we look at the lower 48, if we look at the lower 48, we're in decline. Okay. I'm going to skip over to Permian. Haynesville is in decline. Eagleford is adding, but only 10,000 a day. That's nothing. Bakken is flat. Appalachia is adding, but 2,000 a day. So that's nothing. That's flat. Permian, this is where we're adding 30, 40,000 a day. And when we add all of these layers, this, this is, actually, that's crude oil. This is what I was looking for. Right there. So Permian, we're adding 172,000 a day. All right. Lower 48 is in decline. Haynesville in decline. Eagleford flat. Bakken growing, but by 20,000 a day. Appalachia flat. That means all of natural gas is resting on Permian right now. And right now, when we add all those layers back in, we are looking at a decline scenario. So we are currently in decline. So when we look at the production, when we look at the production profile, power demand, Canadian imports, and LNG, we're setting up for a very volatile summer. So the answer to the equation, are we going to hit 2? Are we going to hit 5? The answer is yes. Question is which one? So watch Canadian imports, watch production, watch power demand, watch the global markets. And the global markets is going to include LNG, but you need to track and trace TTF, TTF and JKM, which is right here. There we go. And that's why we have it right here where you can see Henry Hub is at 363, TTF 1081, JKM. So that's what we got. 5, 2, take your lesson from there. And listen, if you're trading natural gas, you need to be on top of these trends. You don't have to subscribe to us, but those are the trends that you're going to need to look at and you're going to need to research. You can research it yourself. It'll take a lot of time to assemble, or you could come to some place like us, and we are by far the most affordable option out there when it comes to looking at all of the energy commodities together, inclusive with reports, videos, and insight. And for Rogue Edge members, we get an active Discord group where we talk about your problems and your dynamics. And so we would love to see you inside, but these are the things that we're watching every single day. So any closing thoughts, Bill?
Yeah, just like I'd say, in my very humble opinion, we're the best.
Well, listen, folks, thanks so much. Drop us a like, drop us a comment, let us know what you're thinking, and we'll be in touch, and we hope to see you inside. So we'll see you next week.